Hello. Welcome to the Reinvent Your Reality Podcast. My name is Jen, and I welcome you to episode 9 of this weekly podcast. So happy you could join me here today on this beautiful day where we're going to talk about death today. Death, yes. This is a topic that can be very taboo, but there's been a lot of death. I wouldn't say a lot, but I've been witnessing, some people losing pets and people close to them this week. And I wanted to have a conversation about death because I think it's something that we are very sensitive to. We don't talk about it a lot. I mean, the actual dead. And it's because it is a very sensitive subject. Somebody loses somebody. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You want to make sure that you're kind of treading very lightly, because when emotions are very, sensitive, somebody's very sensitive, it's a tough thing to handle, or we really don't want to offend anybody in any way. But I want to have a conversation about it today because I think it is a very taboo subject, and why not talk about it? Why not talk about death? We've all lost somebody in our life, or multiple people. We've lost pets. We've lost anybody or anything that is close to us or not so close to us. So pretty much all of us, we could say, has experienced death in some sort. Now, I'm not going to make this podcast, or at least I'm not going to try and make this podcast morbid. And this is why I want to bring this up, because whenever we mention the word death, people's face just go kind of solemn. We think, oh man. Like, of course, we can't be happy about death, right? It's death. So this is why I want to discuss it, because it gets this, this label that it's such a bad thing. And the question is why? Why do we think death is so bad when we don't know? It could be the most beautiful experience we ever have. Been watching a lot of those near-death experience shows and reading about it. And according to those people who actually kind of face death in a certain way, it's this beautiful experience, this loving energy where we go back to home, and I mean, who's to say they are right? We don't know. It's just based off their experience, but it's this beautiful energy. It's always this story of like them feeling safe and warmth and kindness and all these things. But then when we try to discuss it, it's the most terrible thing in the world. We think of it like, we cease to exist, or people around us cease to exist. And it's a very, very sad thing. And we get depressed about it. And that's okay, because we're human and we have all the emotions running through us. But what I really wanted to talk about is why are we so scared of death in the world? Why do we fear it so much? Is it that we're fearing the actual dying part? Are we fearing it being painful? Or are we more so fearing leaving our family behind and how they're going to deal with it? Or on the other hand, are we fearing regret for not actually living more? Or in most cases, the fear of the unknown, right? Fear of something we can't see. But why do we have to make it a bad thing? Why do we have to think of, like in the movies, like corpses and zombies and decay and all these things? Why can't death be a beautiful thing? Why can't we see it like that? That's why I want to bring it up. What if we could see beauty in the darkness of death? What do you think? What if we could shake our fear of death to live more now? This is the thing. We're all trying to fight aging. We're all trying to fight death. But what are we really so scared of? Sometimes you have to ask yourself, and a lot of times we don't ask ourselves, well, what if we stopped fighting and just flowed with it and went with the seasons? So, we've had a lot of deaths in our life. From the death of relationships to our ego to jobs, careers, our skin cells, hair, death of teeth, right? Things we don't ever notice half the time. Things in nature decay, right? It's part of this cyclical pattern of life. So what is it about us, the unknown of us ceasing to exist, that really, really scares us? Okay. In Chinese medicine, we have birth death cycles. Just in nature, in general, we have birth death cycles. And, I'll bring up the issue of the water element, which I talk about a lot. So the water element in the Chinese 5-element cycle is both birth and death. It's this, the darkness in the womb of pre-birth, but it's also when we die, we go back to home in a sense. So, what if we could get back to that point? Plants and animals don't grieve their friends, but it's us as human beings. We have a higher consciousness. So what is it about that? Why were we given all these emotions? We were given the emotion of grief to use it, to grieve. So I think, in my opinion, maybe we're supposed to experience death so that we can appreciate life more. Because if we never experience death, how would our lives be different? If we were immortal, we might not value the life that we have. We might never feel grateful. So it's all these polar opposites in life. We can't have birth without death. We can't have death without birth, of course. So I think we're given death as a sort of realization in our life. Birth is the ultimate yang. Babies, the ultimate yang energy. Death is the ultimate yin, right? We go back. This forms the perfect circle of life. Wholeness, completion. And like I said, we have all the emotions, in grief in one of them, being one of them, included in our arsenal. So, what happens after death? Why do good people die? This is another question that we could ask ourselves. But you know what? I don't know why good people die. I could see, if we're all energy and we're all vibration, and we could see how death is the end result of some people's own, what they're putting out in the world, or their own demise. And we could be okay with that because we can understand that with our linear heads. But what about those good people? What about my grandparents? What about our pet who's vulnerable, who doesn't know the difference? Why do they get kidney disease and die when they're 2 years old? Why don't they live as long? These are questions that we can't really answer in our limited ability to comprehend stuff. But we have to kind of be okay with that. We're always trying to figure things out in life. We're always trying to figure things out with our head. But as spiritual beings, there's some things that aren't really made to figure out, I think. But I do think that we experienced death in our life so that we do appreciate our life more. And some people may not appreciate their life, surrounding themselves in death and dwelling in it. But I think we're supposed to feel, we're supposed to grieve, and then we're supposed to move forward and understand that this is part of the cyclical part of life. And that we're not supposed to dwell in any which emotion because, it's going to speed us up towards what we fear. And, this podcast is definitely not, I'm not advocating speeding up death if I think it's a beautiful thing. I just think that we need to recognize that we don't have to be afraid of it because we don't know. It could be the most beautiful experience. And we have no idea because we live in such a way where we're like, oh, if I cease to exist, it's kind of like a selfish thing, us fearing death. It's like, if I cease to exist, what will I be? Like, what happens, Even the atheist is like, okay, we die, we turn to dust. Okay, well, if we're dust, that's part of the earth, and the earth is alive, so are we really nothing then? Is nothing something? Right? 99.99999 whatever % of stuff around us is empty space. So are we really nothing? Are we something? Like what is it? There's a lot of things that our brain on a 3-dimensional level can't comprehend, and we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with death and dying. And we have to be okay with talking about it. I don't think it should be this morbid thing. Yes, it's sad when somebody leaves us physically. It's terrible. We never want somebody close to us to leave us because we have connections to one another. As human beings, we have connections, heart-to-heart connections, right? So it's almost like when that physical part is cut off, we disregard any comprehension that that person still exists because the physical body is no longer there. But what if the person does still exist, just not in the form that we think? I mean, it's why people believe in the afterlife, right? It gives comfort knowing that this person's not actually gone. It gives comfort knowing that we can still talk to them whenever we want to and feel comforted by that and get little synchronicities and things like that. So, whether or not you're a believer, it's up to you. It's okay. But I think that we have such a fear of getting old because we have such a fear of decay. And maybe it's because in nature we see things decaying and it's not pretty to us. It's not pretty to our physical touch or our senses with our eyes. It's like viewing rotting garbage. Like that food's no longer good. It's trash. It doesn't smell good. It doesn't taste good. It doesn't look good. So we think, well, that's how we're going to look. We associate it with that. But you know what? That's just the physical decay. And if things didn't decay out in nature, then you would never have birth and growth and rebirth and the cycle of life. Same with us. So, it's okay if you're scared of getting older, you're scared of death. I mean, it's a normal thing for us to be scared of it. But, just remember that there are things we don't always understand. And just because in the movies it's portrayed as a terrible thing, or just because somebody ceases to exist, it doesn't necessarily have to be a terrible thing. I mean, it's something where we miss somebody because we're connected to them. And if they're a good person, we're like, why did this happen to them? Well, they may be in somewhere much, much nicer than here on Earth. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to have a quick little convo about it because I see this a lot where people aren't truly living their lives because they're so focused on fighting aging, fighting death, basically just surviving, prolonging a life that's not well lived. It's like people who are on drugs and prescriptions, and the quality of life is crap. But as long as there's not physical bodies not dead, they're okay with that. It's interesting when you think about it. It's interesting. So that's it, That's all I wanted to say about it. But let me know your thoughts. If you're listening to this, I do appreciate it, especially you listening to the end. Not to do, morbid topics. I should do like Morbid Monday or something like that. But I enjoy talking about things that aren't talked about a lot. I enjoy talking about things that should be discussed because, we're always scared to say certain things in society, fear of offending somebody or judgment. But this is not a conversation to offend anybody. This is something we all go through. This is something we've all experienced. This is something we all will experience someday. So why can't we talk about something that we're going to experience ourselves or something that we have experienced? Why are we so scared to talk about emotions like grief? Why are we so embarrassed to grieve, especially in public? Why are we so scared to cry? Why are we so scared to express ourselves when we are given all these emotions for a reason? They are in our arsenal for a reason. And it's not to just stuff them away for fear that we're going to look embarrassed or something like that. It's to use them. It's to express them. It's not to dwell in them, but it's to have this human experience so that we can appreciate the opposite of that, of those dark feelings, so that we can feel happy when things are no longer dark. Otherwise, we wouldn't know what happy meant, right? If we didn't have the opposite game playing in this world, we would not know. We would be basically have no emotions. We would not know what love felt like if we never experienced hate or whatever the opposite of it is, right? Then life would be a lot less fun, I think, you know? We'd be walking around, we'd be meeting people, and we just I don't know, we wouldn't love anybody, we wouldn't hate anybody. We'd just be kind of robotic, and I think that would be pretty dull, you know? So I think we're here to experience what we've got. And, the question is, okay, we have a higher consciousness than like a plant or a bug or something, so why is that given to us? Is there a reason it's given to us? Is it our connection to something else? Are we supposed to use it? Are we not supposed to use it? It's a good question, but it's something that maybe we don't need to figure out. Maybe we don't need to know what's on the other side, right? Beyond death, because we'll see it for ourselves someday, And that's the thing. If I say that, somebody's going to judge me and say, oh, you shouldn't say that. Don't tell people they're going to die. Well, yeah, you are going to die, and so am I. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow, the next day, or in 100 years from now. Well, then I'd be 139. But hey, with modern technology, there's a very good possibility that I will live to 139. I got good genes. Both my grandparents, great-grandmother lived to 102, the other one to 100, and grandparents to the late 90s. So I got a ways to go, unless something happens. So, so it's making me appreciate life. And that's the thing. When somebody dies, we're different people that day. I talk about this in my book a little bit, 12-Step Guide for the Self-Help Book Addict, which is out now. I mentioned in one part of it that, a section that on death, and I talk about how my uncle drowned years ago in the Raritan River very unexpectedly, and how my family, went to the hospital that afternoon, and it makes you think how death, or you're at a wake, or you're at a funeral, you are different that day, or those couple of days. You're a little more compassionate, you're more empathetic, you're closer, you feel closer to the people around you. But then a week passes or 2 weeks and you go back to the same old stuff, same old whatever. And where you just kind of go back to your autopilot zombie mode and you forget about all that stuff. But it's in those moments of death where we realize who we are and we actually come alive with each other. Where we actually love each other and treat each other how we should. So that is why I think we have death in the world, not only for rebirth and the cycles of nature, but it's to appreciate who we have in our life, to love them, to form connections with people, but also ourselves, and appreciate who we are, and appreciate our life, and take care of our health, and take care of our mind, body, and soul, spirit, whatever. I think that is why it's there for us. And I think it's why we should talk about it in a way where it's not looked at as a bad thing, but as another part of the cycle that we go through, the stages, the transitions of life, and not always view it as the end, the bad thing, because it can be the most beautiful thing. We just don't know. We're just scared of not knowing stuff. So I hope this gives a little perspective to it. And I appreciate you listening to the end. My new book is out, 12-Step Guide for the Self-Help Book Addict. You can find it on my website, jenpalco.com. It's on Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I have a YouTube channel, so I put out weekly content. It's Jen Palco on YouTube. My Instagram handle is Jen_Palco, so make sure you follow me there. And I hope you have a great day, and I will catch you on the next podcast. Peace.